All right, let me ask you something. What if your mind isn't some separate pilot flying your body around like a mech suit? What if your mind and your body are just two sides of the exact same coin? Well, back in the 17th century, a philosopher named Benedictus de Spinoza came up with an idea so revolutionary it could totally flip how you see yourself, your choices, heck, the entire universe. Okay, so before we can really dive into Spinoza's wild solution, we've got to get a grip on the ancient puzzle that he was totally obsessed with. It's a question that has kept thinkers up at night for centuries: the mind-body mystery. Seriously, just think about it for a second. You've got your physical body, right? It's flesh and bone, it takes up space. But then you've got your mind, your thoughts, your feelings, your consciousness, which doesn't seem to be physical at all. So, how in the world do these two things talk to each other? How does a feeling, like embarrassment, make your physical cheeks turn red? That disconnect, right there, is the classic mind-body problem. So, while pretty much everyone else was scratching their heads trying to build a bridge between these two separate things, Spinoza just comes along and takes a sledgehammer to the whole question. His solution? It's radical. He says, what if it's all just one thing, a universe of one? Okay, so Spinoza's big idea kicks off with this one core concept he calls substance. And right away, you have to forget the idea of God as some kind of separate creator sitting outside the universe. For Spinoza, there's only one thing that exists, a single infinite, all-encompassing reality that he calls God or nature. It's the same thing. So everything, you, me, the stars, your thoughts, none of it is a separate object. We're all just temporary expressions, what he calls modes, of this one single underlying substance, kind of like how a wave is just a temporary shape of the ocean. And this is where Spinoza just completely flips the script. See, the traditional view, dualism, is that your mind is like a ghost in the machine piloting your body. Spinoza says, nope, wrong. There is no ghost. There's just the machine, which is that one single substance we just talked about. Your mind and your body, they are not two different things. They're just two different ways of looking at or describing the exact same one thing. Two different attributes of the same reality. Okay, so if they're not two separate things, what exactly is the relationship between your mind and body? This question brings us right to the heart of Spinoza's whole theory. And trust me, his answer sounds pretty strange at first. And here it is. This is the core of his argument, straight from his work, The Ethics. Spinoza says the human mind is the idea of the human body. Full stop. That's its entire job. Your mind isn't some free-floating soul. Its entire identity, its whole purpose, is to be the mental reflection of what's happening in your physical body. Nothing more, nothing less. You know, a good way I think about it is like this. Your existence is one single story, but it's being told in two different languages at the exact same time. Your body is telling the story in the language of physics, with neurons firing and muscles contracting. At the exact instant, your mind is telling the exact same story, just in the language of thoughts, feelings, and perceptions. They're two perfectly parallel tracks. And this idea completely changes how we think about cause and effect, right? Normally we'd say a bright light flashes, that causes your pupils to contract, which then causes your mind to register the perception of light. Spinoza says, no, that's not how it works. The physical reaction and the mental perception are not a cause and effect chain. They are the very same event, just expressed in two different ways. The physical way, which he calls the attribute of extension, and the mental way, the attribute of thought. One doesn't cause the other. They are just happening at the same time in perfect sync. Yeah, and Spinoza puts it perfectly himself when he says the order and connection of ideas is the same as the order and connection of things. What he means is that for every single thing that happens in the physical world, there's a parallel idea happening in the world of thought. The entire chain of physical cause and effect has an identical twin in the chain of mental cause and effect, because really, they're just two ways of describing the same reality as it unfolds. So, okay, if our mind is just the idea of our body, what does that mean for our knowledge of the world? I mean, how can we ever know anything beyond what our own body is experiencing? This leads us straight into Spinoza's very cool ideas about knowledge and his explanation for why we get things wrong so often. Basically, Spinoza argues that our mind doesn't have some sort of direct hotline to ultimate reality. It only gets its information through the body. And since our bodies can only experience a tiny little slice of the universe at any one time, our ideas are almost always confused and fragmentary. And here's the cool part. For Spinoza, being wrong isn't about believing a lie. It's just about having an incomplete picture. But he lays out a path for us to get from that confusion to genuine clarity. He talks about 3 kinds of knowledge. The lowest level, the first kind, is imagination or opinion. This is where most of us live, day to day. It's all based on our limited senses, and it's the only place where we can make errors. But we can climb up to the second kind, which is reason. This is where we use logic to see the connections between things. And the highest level, the third kind, is intuition, a direct, immediate understanding of how everything fits together in the grand scheme of nature. The whole goal of life for Spinoza is to make that climb. And now we get to what is probably the most challenging and, for a lot of people, the most unsettling conclusion in Spinoza's entire system, and it has to do with free will. Spinoza does not pull any punches on this. He's absolutely unflinching. He says, look, if everything is just one substance, God or nature, and everything that happens follows from its necessary laws, then there is simply no room for something like an uncaused free will. Your thoughts, your desires, your choices, all of them are determined. Every single thing you think or want is caused by a previous thought or event, which was caused by another one before that, and so on back into infinity. So why does it feel so strongly like we're free? I mean, it feels like I'm choosing to say these words right now. Spinoza has an answer for that too. He says that feeling of freedom, it's an illusion, and it's born from ignorance. We're conscious of what we want and what we do, but we are completely clueless about the incredibly complex chain of causes that made us want and do those things. His analogy is brilliant. It's like a thrown rock that suddenly becomes conscious in midair and thinks, wow, I'm choosing to fly, all while being totally unaware of the arm that threw it. Now, I know this might sound incredibly bleak, even depressing, but for Spinoza, it was the exact opposite. He found this idea incredibly liberating. Why? Because if you truly accept that everything happens out of necessity, you can stop raging against reality. You can learn to face whatever life throws at you with a calm spirit, knowing it's all part of the larger system. You can't hate someone for what they did because you understand they were determined to do it. So for Spinoza, true freedom isn't being able to make random choices. True freedom is the peace and power that comes from understanding why everything necessarily has to be the way it is. And so we're left with this really profound challenge. If you aren't a ghost in the machine, if you aren't making free choices, then what are you? If your mind is just the mental story of your physical body and you're part of a completely determined universe, then what does it actually mean to be you? That is the mind-bending question Spinoza leaves us to wrestle with.